The sphere for Plaza Fountain, the only piece of World Trade Center artwork to survive the Sept 11 attacks, now sits in Liberty Park, an elevated park at the southern edge of the 9/11 memorial. Laylah Amatullah Barrayn for the New York Times. The memorial at Pearl Harbor captures terror and loss by allowing visitors to view the destroyed U.S.S. Arizona under the sea. The memorial at Hiroshima makes a statement about death and hope by preserving the ruins of a domed hall that stood at the atomic bomb's hypocenter. But in New York, the 9/11 memorial had no such authentic artifact on the site to remind visitors of the horror of the attack it commemorated. Instead, the memorial sought to make the void left by the destruction of the attacks the symbol of loss. By transforming the footprints of the Twin Towers into fountains, the idea, as determined by the jury that chose the memorial design, was to let their absence speak for itself. In the process, the physical remains of the attack, the shattered tridents, the shards of metal and steel, a destroyed ambulance and fire engine, were placed in the National September 11 Memorial Museum under the site that costs adults $24 to visit. But that balance between presence and absence at the 9/11 memorial has begun to shift. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey held a ceremony on Wednesday to mark the return to the World Trade Center site of a battered and scarred 25-foot-tall copper globe sphere for Plaza Fountain, which originally stood between the towers as a symbol of world peace and trade. The sculpture's return was heralded by a Port Authority police honor guard, bagpipes and short speeches from the authority's chief executive and other officials. But primary thanks were given to the man who had championed the cause of returning the sphere to the site most passionately, Michael Burke, 60, who lost his firefighter brother in the attacks. The sphere, amid the debris of the World Trade Center in September 2001. Pool photo by Ted Warren. They are a big, humongous government authority, but they showed a lot of humanity here in what they have done, and they deserve credit for that. Mr. Burke said in his speech, thanking the Port Authority. They listened to me. I became the sphere guy year after year, in meeting after meeting. In the weeks after the attacks, the sphere emerged from the smoldering debris field with its top shorn open like Bush-Edin's skull. But it was structurally intact, and its survival, it was the only World Trade Center artwork that remained, felt to some like a miracle. In 2002, it was moved to Battery Park, where it was welcomed by Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg and others in a somber ceremony as a powerful symbol of resilience. But a decade later, the park, which was to be renovated, asked that it be moved. Mr. Bloomberg said he wanted to keep the sphere in Battery Park. I think it's beautiful where it is, he said in 2012. Michael Arad, the memorial's designer, had pushed against displaying it and other artifacts amid the pools at the memorial site to preserve the integrity of his design. That stance was supported by the 9/11 memorial's leadership. There has been a strong desire to maintain the formal integrity of the design that was accepted and built, and to put something this large and monumental on the plaza would change the dynamic. Alice Greenwald, the president of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, said on Wednesday, adding that the entire premise of the design was the absence of the vertical, so discussions began to find a place on the site outside of the actual memorial. The sculptor of the sphere, Fritz Koenig, who died in February at age 92, supported the effort, but it was Mr. Burke who made it his mission. His brother, Capt. William F. Burke, Jr., had stayed behind on September 11 to help civilians while telling his company to get to safety. Michael Burke, who lost his firefighter brother in the attacks, led the effort to return the sphere to the site. Laylah Amatullah Barrayn for the New York Times. It got beat up, it got damaged, and it carries the truth inside of it, Mr. Burke said in an interview last month. Like any artifact that survived an event like that, like the U.S.S. Arizona, these things carry an inherent truth and memory that cannot be replicated. He was worried, he said, that the lack of visceral artifacts at the memorial was keeping Americans from confronting the magnitude of the attacks and moving on. And at this place, he said, our first task is to faithfully preserve and convey the history of what happened. Even beyond the memorial, very few remnants remain in public view in the entire 16-acre World Trade Center site. Inside the glittering shopping mall and transit hub that is now the Oculus, for example, on Platform D of the PATH train, there is a glass viewing window set into the floor that shows the box columns that formed part of the perimeter of the North Tower. The memorial pools are smaller than the actual footprints. Most commuters just rush by. At the entrance to the E-train, there is a section of the original transit entrance from the World Trade Center, with its floor tiles and doors preserved. On the 6-acre Memorial Plaza itself, the sole standing artifact is a single-calorie pear tree known as the Survivor Tree. Inside the museum, there are two tridents, the pitchfork-like columns that once supported the Twin Towers, at street level, but they are behind the glass walls of the museum, and can be clearly seen only when illuminated at night. Passengers exiting the PATH train, near a window showing the base of the columns that formed part of the perimeter of the North Tower, one of the few remnants of the attack in public view. Laylah Amatullah Barrayn for the New York Times. Mr. Bork pushed for the return of the sphere at meeting after meeting, and eventually found that the Port Authority, which had lost 84 employees in the attack, had the most sympathetic ear. But the agency did not control the plaza site. So in 2016, the Port Authority agreed to place the sphere in Liberty Park, a new, elevated park at the southern edge of the memorial. And that's where it is now, with a panoramic view of the memorial below and One World Trade Center rising above it. It was moved there a few weeks before Sept. 11 this year, but not formally unveiled until Wednesday. Mr. Bork said he was disappointed at first that most visitors to the busier Memorial Plaza below would probably never see it. But then he realized the site has advantages. In Liberty Park, there are fewer guards, and the mood is more casual. People can eat their lunch on a bench near it, just like they used to back in the 1980s, when Mr. Bork himself used to pass by the sphere as a regular part of his commute. It was remembering the normalcy of it all that was somehow the hardest. As he stood by the sphere in Liberty Park in October, a young girl stopped to pose for a picture in front of it, holding her hands up in an arc. Her father took a picture to make it look like she had the globe between her hands. It was just the sort of thing that used to happen before 9/11. There's a photograph you can see. You see the same photo, the little girl standing there, hands up, he said, stopping because the tears had started. He caught his breath. That's the power of an authentic artifact. You can't do that with these waterfalls. A version of this article appears in print on November 30, 2017, on page 825 of the New York edition with the headline symbol of Survival Returns to 911 Site.